This is Mike from fearshop.com. Make sure you like this video and leave your comments. Also, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to set up notifications so you know when the next video drops. Now let's get into it. Today we're talking about the top 10 greatest possession horror movies of all time. If you're looking for some possession movies to haunt you, check out this top 10 list along with some honorable mentions, guaranteed to send shivers up your spine. For the record, not really going to be talking too much about ghost stories, so we're going to try to keep it more on the possession side of things. Before we get into the top 10 list, let's have a look at some honorable mentions. Hereditary from 2018. Hereditary is a shockingly disturbing depiction of a demon seeking to take possession of a host within an unsuspecting family. The film follows Annie Graham, a mother to an odd 13-year-old girl named Charlie and a 16-year-old son named Peter. Midway through the film, a disturbingly tragic event occurs within the family that is the catalyst for the escalating horror that ensues in the latter half of the film. The performances in this film are gut-wrenching and perfect. Next up is The Conjuring II, the Enfield Poltergeist from 2016. Conjuring II is an old-school horror based on a real-life incident. Single mother with distressed children's poor, no dad, helpless, and downright depressing lives in Enfield, London, witness the presence of an evil spirit in their house. They contact paranormal investigator couple Ed and Lorraine Warren to help them. Later it's revealed that the spirit of the old man is manipulated by a demon that is more powerful and wants something more sinister from Lorraine. The same demonic entity in Conjuring 2 has appeared in a prequel movie from the franchise released recently as The Nun in 2018, but the level of scariness Conjuring 2 as a haunted house movie offers is far superior. Director James Wan brings us a masterpiece, which surely deserves a spot on this list. The Babadook from 2014. 6 years after the violent death of her husband, Amelia, played by Essie Davis, is at a loss. She struggles to discipline her out-of-control 6-year-old Samuel, played by Noah Wiseman, a son she finds impossible to love. Samuel's dreams are plagued by a monster he believes is coming to kill them both. When a disturbing storybook called The Babadook turns up at their house, Samuel's convinced that the Babadook is the creature he's been dreaming about. His hallucinations spiral out of control. He becomes more unpredictable and violent. Amelia, genuinely frightened by her son's behavior, is forced to medicate him. But when Amelia begins to see glimpses of a sinister presence all around her, it slowly dawns on her that things Samuel's been warning her about may be real. Next up is Rosemary's Baby from 1968. Rosemary's Baby is unlike most possession movies for a number of reasons. Firstly, the possessed individual, her baby, is never seen, so it's up to our imagination to figure out what's wrong with it. The imagery of Rosemary's reaction to finally seeing her child inside the crib is beyond disturbing. Secondly, there's an underlying cult storyline as members of Rosemary's building plot to impregnate her with Satan's seed, all while she thinks this baby's going to be her sweet bundle of joy. Rosemary becomes increasingly isolated and sickly, carrying a demon baby. The diabolical truth is revealed only after Rosemary gives birth. Last for honorable mentions is The Exorcism of Emily Rose from 2005. The Exorcism of Emily Rose is yet another film loosely based on real-world events. The movie is framed from a litigious perspective, as the priest who performed an exorcism on Emily Rose is on trial for her subsequent death. Details of the entire experience are learned through testimonies heard during the trial. Frequently, the actual occurrence of Emily's possession is shown through flashbacks as the priest recounts the events in court. Now let's move into the top 10. We'll start it off with number 10, the Amityville Horror from 1979. Much like The Exorcist, the Amityville Horror was based on events that allegedly occurred in the home. The horrific murders of the DeFeo family by Ronald DeFeo Jr. in 1974 were central to the beginnings of this story. After the tragic murders, a new family moves into the home and begin to experience strange, unexplainable things. The haunting escalates until the father is overcome with rage through some outside influence and seeks to murder his own family. Much to the horror, as the family is attempting to escape the wrath of the possessed patriarch. Next up is The Exorcist III from 1989. The second sequel to the landmark 1973 horror film The Exorcist This horror outing has little to do with the previous two films. This time, the story centers on a police detective who for the past 15 years have been obsessed with solving a series of murders that occurred on the night of the first exorcism. These murders were exceptionally brutal and seemed to be the work of a serial killer, who was executed in a prison that very night. There are a couple of true jump scares in this one, and it's such an underrated movie. George C. Scott and Brad Dourif are great in this one. At number 8 comes The Evil Dead from 1981. Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead took a different approach to demonic possession. The film followed Michigan State University students who took a trip to a remote cabin. In the cabin, they found an ancient book that would later be recognized as the Necronomicon Ex Mortis in future films. After playing a recorded tape of incantations and demonic forces are unleashed upon the cabin, people remember Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness for being more silly than horrific, but the original Evil Dead was frightening. There was some silliness, but Bruce Campbell became the Bruce Campbell we know today after this movie. Number 7, Evil Dead 2. Evil Dead 2, also known in publicity materials as Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn, is a 1987 American comedy horror film directed by Sam Raimi and a parody sequel to the 1981 horror film Evil Dead that we just talked about. Evil Dead 2 is over-the-top silly, but also non-stop fun. Bruce Campbell really starts to come into his own in this movie. Number 6 is Paranormal Activity from 2007. While found footage style films have been around for some time, Paranormal Activity jump-started the whole genre again with its low-budget but horrific scares. The film follows a couple who are experiencing strange occurrences within their home. Eventually, they record the nighttime activities of this presence. To their amazement, they discover something supernatural is actually occurring. However, it's not a typical haunting. A demon has settled into their home and wants to take possession of the occupants. Number 5 is The Last Exorcism from 2010. The Last Exorcism is seen through the lens of a found footage film, as two individuals are documenting a reverend seeking to prove that exorcisms are one big hoax. In fact, the reverend reveals he has performed fake exorcisms on people who only thought they were possessed. However, this film follows the trio as they answer the call for an exorcism by a farmer who claims his daughter is causing big problems such as killing his livestock. From this point forward, the story only gets more bizarre and disturbing. This is a horror film you don't want to miss. The ending is amazing. I tend to like it more than most people, but it really is a good one. Number 4 is The Conjuring from 2013. James Wan is a master of horror cinema, and The Conjuring proves it. The film follows a family who moves into a new home where they experience supernatural activity. It sounds like any traditional ghost story, but the things eventually take a turn for the worse. The family contacts the now world-famous demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren to help them understand what's happening in their home. The family learns the morbid history behind their new home as a demonic presence takes hold of the matriarch. The film spawned a sequel and several spin-offs. It was praised for its mastery in both scares and building suspense so expertly that the horrific moments felt truly earned. I will say that I put this one on the top 10 list for ghosts and possession, simply because it is a bit of both. Number 3 is the crazy, underrated Fallen from 1998. Directed by Gregory Hoblit, who also directed Primal Fear, Fallen is a blend of the police drama and supernatural thriller genres. Homicide detective John Hobbs, played by Denzel Washington, narrates taking the audience back to the time I almost died. It sets a flashback in motion beginning at the prison cell of a serial killer, Edgar Reese, played by Elias Koteas, who grabs Hobbs' hand and sings the Rolling Stones' "Time Is On My Side," which has never felt the same after seeing this movie. After Reese is executed, Hobbs and his partner Jonesy, played by John Goodman, find a seeming copycat killer, committing murders in a manner not unlike Reese. Hobbs is drawn into the occult after he meets theology professor Greta Milano, played by Embeth Davidtz, the daughter of a dead police officer. Hobbs becomes a suspect himself, but he continues his search for the truth. Co-producer Dawn Steele died just as this film was due for release. I cannot stress how awesome Fallen is. First off, You have Denzel Washington in an amazing role like always, but you just glued to the screen to see what happens next. There's a few cool scenes, including possession, changing bodies just by simple touches, following somebody running away. It's a pretty awesome scene. Number 2 is The Shining from 1980. Almost every haunted house movie seems to have a scene in which the evilness of the building is touted in dramatic tones, but rarely does the actual evil live up to the legend. The Shining has no such letdown. Its iconic imagery, courtesy of legendary director Stanley Kubrick, will give you nightmares for years. And number 1 is The Exorcist from 1973. William Friedkin's seminal 1973 possession film The Exorcist is likely the first title anyone ever thinks of when discussing demonic possession. The film follows the gradual descent of a 12-year-old girl into madness as the demon known as Pazuzu takes hold of her. The film terrified audience when it was first released. Many audience members in 1973 reported feeling nausea from terror. I can't even begin to describe you the nightmares that this movie had given me because I watched it way too young. And then with each subsequent release and how many times they've re-released it in theaters and the version you've never seen before, there's so much goodness that goes on in The Exorcist that if you haven't seen it, stop this video right now and go watch The Exorcist. Alright, so that wraps this video up. I want to hear from you. Post your top 10 greatest horror, ghost, or possession stories, I should say, of all time in the comments. Let me know which movies in my list you agree with and which ones you disagree with. That's it for this episode. Make sure you like this video, make sure you share this video, make sure you subscribe, but most of all, make sure you keep it horror.